Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And we have another one for the file of The Police Are Not Your Friends. This time, a Sussex police sergeant who made a victim feel far, far worse. She was a victim of SA and was making a complaint about it. He then was totally inappropriate to such an extent that it beggars belief. But that's the policing we get in this country because we don't have senior officers imposing rules and regulations down to the men under them. Let's have a look at this article, and it is truly shocking that this sergeant as well, we're not even talking about a young lad, we're talking about a sergeant that got away with this but is finally being hauled over the coals for it. But I suspect he'll probably still keep his job. Let's have a look. So, Sussex police officer sent a selfie, you can read the word, to a woman who reported an SA. And he told her he wanted to use his handcuffs on her and he would have SA'd her himself. I mean, think about that. If you're a woman who's been SA'd and you go to the police, you expect them to be sympathetic, not as bad as the person who SA'd you. The police are not your friends. I keep saying this and I keep coming up with evidence that they're not your friends. Ladies, never trust a policeman. If you have to go to the police, bring a friend. Don't go alone. The victim, known as Female A, alleged the incident happened in March 2014. The sergeant, known as PSX, allegedly sent the victim a selfie of a certain sort and flirted. He reportedly said he'd have SA'd her himself and that she aroused him. The Sussex police officer was granted anonymity, which the R Crisis Centre condemned. So the sergeant told the woman he wanted to take her home and use his police handcuffs on her, and confessed he was so aroused by her he would have SA'd her himself. He made the alleged comments after she approached the officer and told him she'd been SA'd in a bar and wanted to make an official complaint. The shocking revelations were made at a disciplinary hearing today, where the serving police officer faces allegations his behaviour amounted to gross misconduct. If they're proven, then the officer from Sussex Police could be drummed out of the police, but he probably won't, because the police don't like getting rid of people. Controversially, the officer has been granted anonymity to keep his identity a secret. The move has sparked fury from R charities, who say granting the officer anonymity amounts to misogyny and erodes trust and confidence in the police. Jane Butler of the R Crisis said, granting anonymity to officers accused of this does not build up public trust. It speaks to a culture of misogyny where the reputation of a police officer trumps the safety of women and girls, and she's quite right. This would never have happened if he hadn't have done it. So I'm not going to say that he's guilty because he hasn't been found guilty yet, but the fact that it's got this far tells you that there's no smoke without fire, shall we say. The hearing was told the alleged incident happened on March 2014, when the woman and her two sisters were enjoying a night out in Hastings in East Sussex. They were drinking in Yates Wine Bar when Female A was groped by a man who put his hand up her skirt. Cicely White for Sussex Police said the man put his hand up and groped her bottom and her V over her clothing. She said out of the blue she was touched. She was shocked and disgusted by it. It was completely unwanted and uninvited. The man was evicted from the pub and the victim went outside to report the attack to the police. The sergeant who was on patrol in the town centre sat the victim in the front of his car to take a witness statement. But as he took her statement, he allegedly began making sexually suggestive and flirtatious remarks to her and told her he liked her short dress. He said, "You're turning me on, you're arousing me," and he said he would have put his hand up her skirt himself. Now, how does this woman feel? Having just had that done, and she goes to what is supposedly the safety of a policeman, and a senior, a sergeant, we're not talking about a young constable here, and he says and does these things. Is it any wonder the police have got such a bad reputation, that people don't trust them, that people fear them, that people find them contemptuous? We have policing by consent in this country, and that consent is evaporating very, very quickly because of things like this. The disciplinary hearing was told that he then told her he wanted to take her home and tie her up. Ms. White said he wanted to take her home and use his handcuffs on her and tie her up. He said something along the lines of fair play to the guy for grabbing her, and he understood why he'd done it, saying I'd have done the same myself. The sergeant, known as PSX, took her mobile phone number and later sent her a full-length naked selfie. The sergeant, known as PSX, took her mobile phone number and later sent her a full-length selfie. Ms. White said later she got a text from the number she did not recognise. She asked who it was and he replied with his name. He then sent a photo of himself and said it was a full-length picture of himself taken in the mirror, and he had a non-hanging down part of his body. Do apologise for the language I'm using here. It's the YouTube algorithm. I have to be very careful what I say. So let's just say he was tumescent in the photograph. She showed it to her sister and deleted it along with the flirtatious messages he had sent. Months later, she bumped into the officer again in court when the offender went on trial and was convicted for the SA against her. The officer asked her why she had not replied to his messages and again became flirtatious and suggestive. The woman batted off his advances and did not rise or reply to his flirtatious comments. This guy is such a prick, really. But he's a policeman. He's meant to represent the law and order in this country. He's actually little more than an R himself. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if his name was released, if many, many more women came forward and said, yes, that's him. I suspect that it isn't just flirtatious messages and photographs and things like that. I would be very surprised if that was the limit. I think in the, 8 years since this event, I think he's gone a lot further. And I think publish his name, publish his photograph, and see what comes out. Because I think this guy is probably an R. And it would be nice to get him in prison. She only reported the incident in 2020 after the officer's name cropped up in an unconnected matter. Today, Jane Butler, CEO of Our Crisis, said, "We're deeply concerned to hear that a serving police officer has been granted anonymity whilst facing disciplinary action, especially disciplinary action of this type. We know that the vast majority of those who experience SV do not report what happened to them for fear of being disbelieved, judged or blamed for their assault. It's unacceptable that any survivor should also have to fear the unwanted advances made towards them by police officers." It goes on and it just talks about the anonymity there. But I'm going to come up. But the main thing here that we've got to take away is that, first of all, you can't trust the police at all, ever. Never trust them. That woman, and I say this a lot, whenever you have any dealings with the police, pull your phone out, start recording. And if he was sitting in that car and she was surreptitiously recording, he'd have been fired a long time ago. And I honestly believe that in the 8 years since that event, he has not stopped just with her. And I suspect if his name and picture were published in the paper, there would be dozens, possibly hundreds more coming forward to say he did this, he did that, he did something else. And that man needs to go to prison. But I shall leave it there and come up. If you can avoid it, have nothing to do with the police. If you can't avoid it and you have to deal with the police, whip your phone out and start recording it. They hate it, but there's nothing they can do. If for some reason you can't record, grab someone, have a witness, do not be with them alone. Now, you keep hearing the story that it's a bad apple in the barrel. Well, I'm afraid that won't wash. There seems to be too many bad apples. And here's the thing. The good apples in the barrel never report the bad apples. So they're all in it together. They're all in the same barrel. And it's a rotten, rotten barrel. They can't be trusted, and we need a root and branch change through the entire system. But things like this are appalling. And I feel sorry for the woman in question. She went through a bit of a traumatic experience and should have been at peace and dealt with sympathetically you know, with that throughout that experience, not further traumatised. Now, I said in the piece, and I guarantee that cop did not stop with her. And I suspect if his name and picture were published, who knows how many would come out. And it wouldn't just be sending selfies and flirtatious comments. Anyway, I shall stop now. If you like what you hear and see on the channel, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring the bell for notifications of future output. Leave a like, leave a comment, and until next time, stay safe, stay well, always video the police, and goodbye.